So today I interview Alicia Philly, the founder of the Healthy Hiker Project, and she dives into training for the older population hiker. This is an incredible episode full of really valuable information for any hikers who are in the older age bracket, and there's also some really solid nuggets information for any hiker out there who might be interested in their physical preparation. So get yourselves ready and let's get into it. Alicia, thanks for coming on the show.
Hey, Rowan. Thanks for having me on the podcast.
So really excited to have you on. So to start things off, Alicia, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself, your background in the world of hiking, and then what you do with the Healthy Hiker program?
Sure, absolutely. Well, I founded the Healthy Hiker program to serve the hiking community. I myself am an avid hiker. And while I was out on the trail, what I saw was that people who had these big dreams, they spent so much of their time and their money and their energy preparing for these life's crowning achievements. You know, they wanted to walk the Camino or hike the Grand Canyon rim to rim or, do the AT. But once they got out there, they just became miserable on the trail, or they had to quit entirely because they didn't spend the same amount of time and energy training their bodies for what they were getting ready to ask them to do. So I knew that my experience as a physical therapist, I could help prevent injuries rather than having to treat people after the fact. And because I am an avid hiker, I understand the particular needs of hikers and backpackers, and so I was just eager to help that community. It's a great community. It's a fun, thriving, active community, and so I just love being around my people.
And then how long have you been doing the Healthy Hiker program for?
So I started the Healthy Hiker in 2019, so just over within the past year, just because I really wanted to specialize in working with that population. I was seeing, I would hike and I would see grandparents, or a lot of times it's moms who are sitting at the base or at the trailhead, and they are watching everyone else go off on these great adventures and they don't get to go. And so that just really spoke to my heart and moved me. And I just decided I wanted to develop something to help that population so that everybody could live a life that was adventurous.
So diving into it then, do you have any particular philosophies that you believe when it comes to physical prep for hikers?
Sure. Well, my underlying philosophy is that you're never too old for adventure. So I really do believe that everybody can hike. And it's just that you might need a little training to get yourself fit enough to be on the trail. So I want people to continue to dream big dreams. I have a close friend, and all my life that I've known her, her big dream was to hike Machu Picchu. And not too long ago, we were having a conversation, and I said, well, you're about this time in your life when you can go and do that big dream. And she said, oh, well, that ship has sailed. I'll never be fit enough to do that again. And I've gained too much weight. And it just broke my heart. So my philosophy really is just that you're never too old for adventure. You can do it. You just might need a little help to get there.
That's exactly a conversation that I've had with both of my parents. Last year, I sort of went and did a big trek over in Papua New Guinea, and I was trying to convince my old man to come on the hike with me. And that was exactly the same conversation we had. And he was like, look, it's too late. That ship sailed. Like, I'm happy to bushwalk, but something that big is never going to happen. I just couldn't convince him at all. So I know exactly what you mean there.
Yeah. Well, it can happen. They can do it. And I just reach out to professionals like yourself and myself, and we can teach people how to get there.
So saying that you specialize in training seniors for adventure, when it comes to this population, what do you think when it comes down to the training, what's currently not really done very well in their hiking preparations?
Well, I typically see folks who have these kind of aspirations. They are typically very active through midlife. So maybe they're runners or they're cyclists. Maybe they've practiced yoga and they feel fit and active, but they underestimate the demands of hiking. They think it's just going to be a walk in the woods. And all they need are some really cool boots and a fancy day pack or the latest, sleekest, lightest backpack, and they lack the physical preparation. And what they primarily lack is strength. And you and I both know that strength only comes through resistance training. So, excuse me. That's something that I see is lacking in the preparation of an older population. And resistance training is so important for them because as we age, we begin to lose muscle mass. It's a process called sarcopenia, which just means normal age-related muscle mass. So by the time you're 45 years old, you've lost a noticeable amount of muscle mass. Anywhere from 5 to 7 pounds of muscle is just gone if you are not practicing some sort of resistance training. And that continues as you age. You can lose up to 1% of your muscle every year that you age. And so I think people don't really realize that even though they've been active, even though they may run or cycle or practice yoga, that they really have lost a significant amount of strength. And as you said, and I love getting your emails, and one of your emails you were talking about, you can still be hiking and trekking and be quite weak. And yeah, that it's just that is that you can do your walks and you can do your cycling and what have you, but you might not be strong in certain areas, and those areas may result in injury if you don't address them. So that's where I see most people ignoring an important part of their training is doing some sort of strength training.
And then to dive into that a little bit deeper, for some of the older population to minimize or even potentially stop that like age-related muscle loss, what are some people listening to strength training, they often get the ideas of like, I've got to go out and do, lift heavy weights for hours and hours a week and all that. What are some sort of minimum areas, or how much would someone realistically have to do to help reduce that muscle loss?
Yeah, you don't have to be an Olympic lifter to reduce that muscle loss. Really, you just need a basic, even a body weight strengthening program, but something that you do consistently. And then if you can add on more weight and more resistance, then all the better. I think people older folks especially get scared off with exercise and weight training when they start to have some kind of arthritic pain or joint pain. And they say, oh, well, I can't exercise because my joints hurt. And here's the interesting thing is that movement really is medicine. The only way that you can get circulation and nutrients into those joints is through movement. There's very, very little actual blood flow that goes in there without a mechanical pumping of the joints flexing and extending, flexing and extending. So I think people get scared. They think, oh, weight training, my joints hurt. I'm not going to be able to push and pull too much. It's going to stress my joints. So you don't have to start out gangbusters. Light weights are perfect, but to do some kind of resistance training, just a full body, you can do movements that target more than one muscle group at a time. I'm sure you're very familiar with that, as opposed to doing the isolated machines that target just one section of your body. You can be really efficient about it and do activities that will address many muscle groups at once. So it doesn't have to be so focused in the gym all the time.
And then diving into that a bit more as well. So if someone was just getting into some type of resistance training and they were getting a little bit of sort of joint pain or arthritic pain, how would they be able to differentiate between, okay, this is pain I have to maybe accept and it's going to be good for me, as opposed to this is maybe a little bit too much? Would there be any way they could make that judgment call?
Sure, absolutely. When you start a new exercise program, it is very normal to experience not only muscle soreness, but joint soreness. So you would have that delayed onset muscle soreness after 1 or 2 days after your exercise. You're going to feel soreness in your muscles, and you may feel soreness in your joints as well. 1 to 2 days I tell folks that's pretty much a gauge. If by the third or fourth day you're still experiencing pain, then you've done too much. It's time to back off a little bit. Don't do quite so much the next time. But I go ahead and tell folks that yes, you're going to experience a little soreness for the first couple of days after you start a new exercise or after you add weight. That's normal and expected. So don't worry. And a lot of times, once people just know that, then it's not as much of a big deal. When they don't know to expect it, then they think that they've done something wrong. They've in some way hurt themselves or hurt their joints. And that's not the case at all. So that's kind of a good guidelines. Within 2 to 3 days, by the fourth day, if that pain hasn't subsided, then you need to back off a bit. But if it has, then you're at just the right level where you should be. So continue there for a bit, and then you can progress once that gets a bit easier.
I know I bet a few listeners listening into this have probably had this situation. So I want to talk about it very briefly. Like in my experience, I've worked in quite a few like health clubs. So gyms that are sort of deal with all age groups and quite a few older populations. And I know there's a lot of people out there who have taken that first step towards strength training or resistance training. And they're like, look, I'm going to join a gym. I'm going to do some exercise. And then they get taken through the gym and they get paired up with a personal trainer to show them some exercises. But it just happens to be this personal trainer's 18, 20, 22 years old. And they have no idea about maybe appropriate exercise prescription. And they hammer these poor people coming to the gym. And they're sore for like 10 days, 12 days after. And they never return to the gym again. So if someone is in that situation and you are worrying that, look, I can't do this because this has happened to me in the past, just know that there are very many levels you can work at in exercise. And if you've happened to have that type of bad experience, don't let that put you off, because I've seen it so many times, and I'd hate to have any of the listeners sort of in that boat as well.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. And, I can be honest and say I've even done that to myself. You go out and you feel great and you think, well, what's a couple more plates on that bar? and then you're sort of regretting it for quite a few days. So, listen to your body, but just understand that it's very difficult to truly hurt yourself. So just trust your body, trust that it's made to move, and know that that soreness for a few days is just completely normal. And if it goes beyond that, then you know that you've just bitten off a little too much. Back off a bit.
So then moving on, what else do you think might not be done enough of for the older hiking population in their preparations?
Well, this just dives in a little bit more into the strengthening aspect, and it applies to older folks and quite a few, really anyone. But what I see ignored in a strength training regimen is calf strengthening. So just to review for your listeners, the calf muscle is, there's 3 muscles in the calf. The really sexy one, the gastrocnemius, that gives you that nice little bulge in the back of your calf. And it goes across the knee and it goes across the ankle. It works to bend the knee and it works to point the ankle down like a ballerina. And then underneath that lies the soleus. And the soleus is sort of that flatter muscle, and you have to really work hard to get a nicely defined soleus. So you almost don't even see it sometimes, but it just goes across the ankle and helps to push the foot down like you're pushing on the gas pedal. And so I think they're small muscles. They don't get a lot of attention. Everybody's going for the big prime movers, the glutes and the hamstrings and the quads, and they're squatting and getting those muscles really going, and they are important. But I think the calf just gets left out. And when you're hiking, the calf is really important, because that's what's going to propel you when you're going up an incline, when you're bouldering, you're scrambling over big rocks, or if you're even stepping, like a lot of hikes like the Grand Canyon is just purely just step after stairs after stairs. And so I think people don't strengthen their calves enough. to be quite honest, and especially strengthening that soleus. So I would really recommend that people work on calf raises, and you can do that while you're brushing your teeth, while you're washing your dishes, anytime you're standing at a countertop. I just recommend people to just go up on their toes, try to do 25 calf raises, and when you can do them easily on standing on both legs, and try to do it standing on one leg, and hold on to the counter for balance. And then to get that soleus to do the same movement, to come up on your toes, but with your knees bent, and just really isolate that soleus muscle, because that's going to be what propels you forward when you're going up an incline.
And then going into that, if someone was doing calf raises, and they're like in my experience, most hikers generally familiar with the straight leg calf raise that you're describing. Would the bent leg calf raise, which is attacking the soleus, would that feel a little bit different? Like, where should they be feeling that in their legs?
Yeah, it is going to feel a little different. You're going to feel it a little lower down in the calf. So not up towards the knee, but more towards the middle of the calf or lower. And it's not going to be a big movement. Your body is not going to raise up and down as much. So when you are doing that straight leg calf raise, you go up and you can really tell it. But once you bend those knees, it's more about just moving the lower body. Really, you don't have a whole lot of vertical movement of your whole body when you're doing that movement. It's surprisingly isolating when you do that, and you can really target that soleus, and you really begin to realize that, oh, maybe that needs a little attention. need to show a little love.
Are there any other special considerations that an older hiker should be aware of in their training?
Sure. And this goes hand in hand with trying to build muscle. As we've talked about, you're losing muscle, you're going to try and stop that process and then even build muscle. And older folks need to make sure that they're supporting all of that resistance training with their nutrition. As we age, we start to also kind of lose our appetite. We lose our appetite. We start to lose, what happens is you start to lose your taste buds, really. And so that's why you'll find a lot of people, older folks, really like ice cream, because it's cold and they don't taste as well, but it's super sweet and it's super cold. And so you get that sensation. I know that my husband's grandfather, he ate 2 meals a day, and one of them was ice cream. But that's not going to give you all the protein that you need to put on that muscle. So older folks need to make sure they're getting enough protein in their diet. And that range is about 1.2 grams to 1.6 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight. So it's a good bit of protein, and it's just something to keep in mind. You don't want to waste that time that you spend in the gym. You want to make sure you're supporting it well.
So we're in a bit of a unique situation at the moment of recording this, and many hikers out there who might be training from home. Is there any training advice you would want to pass on to some older hikers who are trying to get the most out of their training at this time, whether they're stuck at home or can't get to the gym?
Right. It is a a strange time, but it's certainly a time not to be wasted. So it's an excellent time to take stock of physical condition. So I see in a lot of the groups, the hiking groups that I'm in, everybody's pulling out their equipment and they're taking stock of what they've got. They're dreaming about what they want, maybe what they want to upgrade. They're shopping all the sales because everyone's trying to get some business going. And it's a good time to do exactly the same thing with your bodies, to just really review what's been going on with your body. Think about last season, depending on where you are in the world. If you are in season, I know we're just coming out of winter here in the Northern Hemisphere. And so everybody was just gearing up, all their trips are planned and we're getting really excited for their big hikes. But so depending on where you are, think about your last time of hiking. Were there some niggles that you started to notice? Were there some little aches and pains that were starting to creep in? Maybe there was a little joint pain or tightness that you noticed after a long trek or after a backpacking weekend, you're like, oh, my back really was kind of sore. Just start to reflect back on that, and then try to think about how to address that now. And it's a perfect time to seek some professional help from a professional such as yourself, and to develop a home-based strength and flexibility program. That way they'll be in prime shape once they venture out. And I really recommend that that folks be methodical about this approach, not just oh yeah, I need to be working out right now, but really think about what you need to target. Like I said, if you've identified some places where you might have some deficits, what do you need to target? And then set some goals and start to work towards those. And again, if you need some professional help, some professional direction, some guidance as to how to achieve those goals or where to start, reaching out to get that help.
And then, are there any other types of training, or even just other positive areas of focus which aren't even training related, which might be great for hikers at this time, which they might not have first considered?
Yes. Another thing that I address with older hikers is balance training. And this is, again, something that's often overlooked, but as you age, you start to lose your balance. And when you're a kid, you're always challenging your balance. You're walking on the curb and you're hopping and playing hopscotch, doing things on one leg. And as we get older and we get more sedentary, even if we're active, we do spend most of our time just sitting. And we don't work and challenge our balance. And so we lose some of those balance reactions. And so 30% of the people over the age of 65 are going to fall once a year. And the really staggering thing is 50% of those people will not return to community ambulation to be walking at a level where they can take care of themselves. They can go to the store for themselves. They can live independently. So falling for an older person is really dangerous. And one thing that we do know is that balance training helps to prevent falling. So if falling is a hazard just in normal life, think about it on the trail where there's roots and rocks and distractions, and here comes a squirrel to trip you up. I mean, there's just all kinds of ways to catch your toe and stumble when you're out on the trail. And so really we want to prevent falling on the trail for this older population. And the best way to do that is through balance training. And so I lead some local hikes in my area, and I always begin my group with a dynamic warm-up that also works on balance. And so one sequence I like is a slow march. So I have them march for 20 yards, just slowly bringing your knee up to your chest, giving a little squeeze and down. And just that act of standing on one leg really helps to wake up the ankle, wake up the hips, wake up the mechanoreceptors, the nerve endings that sense where your body is in space. And then if you want to progress that sequence, you can do monster walk. I'm sure you're familiar with that, like Frankenstein with your arms out and you're walking, extending one foot out to try and touch your hands at a time. And then progressing beyond that, I would have them stand in place, bring a knee up to chest, and then take the opposite elbow and try and touch the knee to elbow. So you're now, again, standing on one leg. You've incorporated movement with bringing your knee to your chest, but then you're also getting some trunk rotation, which further challenges your balance and wakes up the trunk a little bit. So I'd like to take them through that sort of minimal dynamic warm-up and also start to work on balance. And it's really eye-opening, and people don't realize how much they've lost their ability to balance. So that's something that I think older hikers should pay particular attention to.
Would that just be appropriate for a warm-up, or would that be something that hikers might do at home as well?
Oh, absolutely. You could do it at home. You could, I even have folks, if they have like a hallway, to start to try to walk heel toe frontwards and then try to do it backwards. And you've just got that hallway there. So you could, if you start to lean or fall, you can catch yourself on the wall. And then once you are you've mastered that and you think that you're really secure there, then try to do it with your eyes closed, and that further challenges your balance. So absolutely, I recommend that people are, challenging their balance as much as they can and taking advantage of those instances when you're out in the community. Of course, many of us aren't out in the community right now, but when you are out, be a kid, walk along the curb, try to walk heel toe on the lines in the parking lot. Hop when you see something, hop over the cracks in the sidewalk. Try to think back to some of the things you did as a kid. Do those things, and that will continue to challenge your balance and keep it refreshed.
Yeah, fantastic. That's I really do love balance training, and those are some ideas that I've never heard of before, and never done before. So I think that's I might have to borrow a few of those techniques in my own training.
Absolutely. We get so attached to things like the Bosu ball or the little flat foam, balance, and it doesn't have to be that fancy, really.
So I feel like we've covered quite a bit today. Was there anything that we didn't get to which you'd like to add to anyone listening?
Yeah, sure. We didn't talk about equipment, and I just wanted to touch quickly on that. I always want to emphasize that it's important to get a good fitting hiking shoe or boot, and to make sure that you break that in. But I also encourage older hikers to use hiking poles. Now, some people, I wrote a blog on my website, and I think I called it something like, "Do these hiking poles make me look wimpy?" Some people have a bit of a stigma about using hiking poles, but hiking poles are fantastic. They can bear some of the load. If you do have achy arthritic knees, the hiking poles can take some of the load off and help you hike more comfortably. And they're also great for supporting folks in helping to keep their balance on the trail. So for older people, I think they're just absolutely invaluable.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And it's a big mission of mine to try and get every single one of my clients on the hiking poles, regardless of age. And I know exactly what you mean about some people are a bit opposed to them by the way they look. But yeah, 100%, I couldn't agree more. They're so, so valuable. It's been a really, really great episode today, Alicia. I feel like you've shared a whole bunch of really valuable information, which a lot of the stuff we have never even touched on before in this podcast. So this has been really, really amazing. If someone who was listening, wanted to get in contact with you to find your content online or potentially work with you, where could they find you?
Sure. Yeah, they can find me on my website, which is www.thehealthyhiker.com. And they can also find me in social media. I have a private Facebook group, and then I am on Instagram and Facebook, and that is at The Healthy Hiker. So it's HIKR, both on Facebook and Instagram, The Healthy Hiker.
Okay, I'll put some links for those down below, so anyone listening can check them out in the show notes. And going off your website, do you want to tell us a little bit about the actual Healthy Hiker package that you offer?
Sure. Yeah. So I have a Base to Summit program. It's a 12-week virtual program for anyone who is wanting to live a big adventure. And whether that adventure is you want to hike the Camino or do a Grand Canyon rim to rim, or if it's just you want to go on a family vacation and not be left out. You want to be able to join your family as you go visit some national parks and feel confident with your ability to keep up. And so it's an individualized virtual program. So we just start where you are and we take you where you want to be.
Well, again, I'll leave a link for that down below, so anyone who wants to have a look at that, they can check it out. But thank you so much for coming on, Alicia. As I said, it's been a really, really valuable episode. I think a lot of people are going to get a whole bunch of really quality information, and let alone not just the older hikers, but there was a lot of great stuff in there for anyone listening as well. So I really appreciate you coming on.
Oh, thank you so much. It's been my pleasure. Absolutely.